Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanny and Clarky visit crimes and run them through their jury of three, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Very well, thank you.
Very well.
Yes, good. Good. Yeah, so we left the last episode, which was the sort of backstory, if you like, to Caylee Anthony and the disappearance of Caylee Anthony, and left you on a bit of a cliffhanger, really, because there's so much in this story. So I'm going to, without further ado, I suppose I should introduce us. I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanny.
And I'm Clarky, and together we are Trial by Wine.
And I bet we are drinking the same thing we were drinking in the last episode. So without further ado, I'm going to continue the story of Caylee Anthony. So quick recap. Caylee was a big fat liar. She told lots of lies about where her baby was for 31 days when Caylee had gone missing. And then she told the police tons of lies after that. Parents, her mother definitely had serious concerns about where Caylee was. She ended up calling the 911 3 times. And now we find ourselves, and they jumped immediately in the investigation to assuming that she had murdered her daughter. I covered in the last episode the forensics that had led the medical examiner to suggest that this was a homicide or rule it a homicide, and the fact that the police didn't appear to actually investigate anyone else. So, okay. I think when I finished last, I was talking about how Caylee's a big fat liar. All right, so Caylee's a big fat liar, but is she a killer? And if Caylee didn't kill her daughter, what happened? Or who did? I reckon this case should be a movie. It's just so interesting. Anyway, it's very hard, and you won't get an easy answer as to what happened. You're going to be left having to work it out for yourself, unfortunately. Sorry, Swanny. I know you like it when it's just cut and dried, but can't help you with that. Right, so we start the case with the prosecution leaning hard on her post-disappearance behaviour and lies, and that they are measures of her guilt. The defence, however, basically immediately say Caylee actually died as a result of an accidental drowning in the family's pool. And Caylee's lies were a coping mechanism shaped by trauma and abuse. And I will remind you that Caylee had been lying for most of her life, certainly since she was 8. And we should ask ourselves how often kids just lie for no reason.
So is the defence suggesting that Caylee found Caylee dead in the pool?
I'll get to it.
And wrapped her up and put her in a bag and, okay.
No, they're not, I don't think. So
sounds like it.
Research in psychology shows that survivors of childhood sexual abuse often develop complex coping strategies. These can include disassociation, emotionally detaching from reality to endure trauma, secrecy, learning to hide or minimize experiences to avoid punishment or disbelief, deceptive behavior, lying because a defense mechanism to control a chaotic or dangerous environment. For a child, lying is not necessarily about manipulation, but about survival. It can become ingrained into adulthood as a reflexive strategy when facing conflict, scrutiny, or shame. At trial, defense attorney Jose Baez alleged that Caylee was sexually abused by her father, George Anthony, and that this taught her to lie from an early age. The claim was shocking, and George denied it under oath. No independent evidence corroborated the allegation, but the defense didn't need proof. They only needed to raise doubt about Caylee's behaviour and credibility. So basically the defence have said she lied and she was all disassociated and all the rest of it because that's a coping mechanism that she has learned since she was the victim of sexual abuse by her father.
Abused by her father, but there's no evidence of that.
Well, how can you prove that?
Did she say that she was sexually abused by her father? Or they just decided that she was?
No, 100% she says she was sexually abused by her father. Yep.
She did.
Then?
She does now, and she did then. Yep.
Yep.
What we have to assume is that Caylee told her defence team some version of what happened. And, of course, they're not going to
which you would expect her to
client
do.
privilege, right? Yeah, which gives them something to work with. And so so she told them that she'd been abused. I'm not sure that at the time she told them what her current story is, because her story over time has changed. She's undergone an awful lot of therapy, she says, and she has a better sense of why she behaved a bit the way she was. She does say she's incredibly ashamed of how she behaved. The fact that she did lie, the way she responded to everything made it so much worse. And she's,
But is she saying that that her daughter drowned?
That's where it gets trickier. So we're not done yet. Yep. You should have got yourselves wines for this one. I should have warned you.
Oh, fuck, man.
Okay. So even without confirmation of that sexual abuse, the theory resonated psychologically. So Casey's elaborate lies, inventing jobs, friends, caregivers, they were extreme, but consistent with someone who had normalised dishonesty as a way to avoid confrontation or exposure. As I said,
also
Casey herself...
consistent with a truth stretcher.
Yeah, but what makes a truth stretcher? Why do you become a truth stretcher? And that's the heart of the question here. Why did she start lying at a young age and consistently lied about lots of things? Like, she was known to be a truth stretcher.
Or it's irrelevant. That's what I guess that's what I'm saying.
I'm not convinced
it could be
irrelevant.
that, or it might not be.
I'm not convinced.
I've worked with people who are compulsive liars. It's so frustrating, but
yeah, I know it's really bad.
I wouldn't I wouldn't automatically go that's because they're abused.
No, but compulsive lying isn't a diagnosis in its own right. It's a symptom of something else. So anyway, and you're right. It could be sexual abuse. It could be something else. But I mean, I could cite those references because I went to the effort of getting them, but then I deleted them because this was too long. But I did look up some. All that bit about psychology was actually underpinned by referencing. Trust me. Anyway, I didn't quote anyone directly, but I
was just going to say, I don't think the lying is evidence of abuse. So whilst that may be symptomatic of abuse, it doesn't prove
that she was. That's right.
So I'm not automatically going, all of that happened because she was abused.
Correct. Yeah, no, get it.
Yeah.
But she says that her father abused her from the time she was 8 till she was 11 or 12, and then he stopped, which I thought was interesting. And then after that, Casey says that her father abused her from the time she was about 8 years old till 11 or 12. And then she said that after her father had stopped coming in and well, by abusing, we're talking the gamut, right? Her brother, who was a bit older than her, then started to touch her inappropriately also. She does stipulate that he didn't ever rape her or, not to the same degree, but he started to abuse her as well. Anyway, so if that's true, and to your point, Clarky, her lying doesn't prove that that's true, but if it is true, it could account for her behaviour.
It could be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She lied throughout the investigation and trial, but has later, as I say, after a lot of therapy, come to a more consistent story as to what happened. So let's go back to the day Caylee disappeared, because I think in that timeline there's some stuff that's never been uncovered, put it that way. So George, Casey and Caylee were definitely the Anthony household. It was a pretty ordinary suburban house with a smallish garden and an above-ground pool. George's account was that he last saw them both when Casey left the house at around 1 p.m. However, phone and computer records position Casey at or around the house until just after 4 p.m., or at least her phone. So George, yes, tells everyone that he saw Caylee last with Casey going off to work at about 10 to 1, 12:50, 1 o'clock. And probably no one ever questioned that, because Caylee herself said she had gone off because she got off to drop the baby with a babysitter before she went to work herself. And I find that interesting. I find it interesting that there's a story between the two of them about that last moment, and no one ever questions George. But we know it's not true because we know Zanny doesn't actually exist, and there's evidence in the phone and computer records that she's still at the house. So both Casey...
Is there evidence of when she started work that day? Like, is there any
She
of that
left the house, according to phone records, because her phone is pinging from cell records at 6:40. Sorry, 16:40.
4:40. But
4 o'clock, between 4 and 4:20.
You're not real good with the clock, love.
I got confused there, didn't I? Sorry. Yeah. I can't do the 24-hour thing. Yeah.
I can't do a 24-hour clock.
I was 1,640 hours.
And the small hand was on the floor.
Oh, bless you.
No, but did she actually work that day? And if so,
she
do you
didn't
know
work.
what time
She didn't have
started?
a job. She went to her boyfriend's, and she definitely went to her boyfriend's at about 4 o'clock. She got to her boyfriend's about 20 past. Right. She was on the phone to him at the time. So
he was lying when he said she went to work, and she was agreeing with him.
She lied about working. So from George and Cindy's perspective, they thought she had a job because she was lying about working. So, but I think he lied about her leaving because he
that's what I'm wondering.
He used details like,
was he involved in the?
Because there's details like he says, I remember Caylee and her, they had their backpacks and off they went. Did they? Right. So I don't think George is kosher. And yet I kept reading people going, well, the evidence is that George saw them last at this time. I'm like, no, that's what he said.
George's story.
That's George's story. But there's no evidence. It's not a photo taken at that time or CCTV camera or anything like that. There's
Witness testimony is the most unreliable.
Dodgy as, yes, that's right. So in the recent documentary, Casey says that she had a lie down with Caylee because she wasn't feeling terribly well. And when she woke up, Caylee was gone. And Caylee had actually been beside her on the bed. And then so George, she comes out and goes, where's Caylee? And George is like, what do you mean, where is she? What have you done? She's like, I haven't done anything. Where is she?
Where are you?
Yeah, where were you?
Aren't you at work?
He hadn't gone to work yet. This is her version of events, right? So then they run around looking for her, looking for Caylee. And then she goes out the front of the house and George goes out the back. And when she comes around the side of the house and she finds George standing there with Caylee in his arms, dripping wet, as if she has been taken out of the pool. And she says he handed Caylee to her and she's soaking wet and she's cold. Casey becomes distraught and George says, this is all your fault. You did this. You know, you're a bad mother or something like that. And she's just looking all shocked and horrified. And then he sort of changes and he says, look, don't worry. And he takes Caylee from her and he says, she's all right. It's going to be okay. She's all right. And he takes her inside and says, and then Casey seems to have no recollection as to what happened next. In her mind, her father had taken Caylee and Caylee was with her father for that 31 days. And she apparently, according to her, kept saying to him, where's Caylee when I'm going to see her? And he's like, don't worry, she's okay, she's fine. Don't worry, she's coming back. Don't worry, she's fine.
All right then, cool. No worries.
And that's her, is that her recent thing as well? Or
that's
are we going to get to that?
Her recent account.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Oh, fair enough then.
I
think that's the end of the story then, I guess.
Still, neither of them.
Nothing to see here.
That's right. No. Do what you might expect and call 911. So obviously it sounds a bit weird. If you believe that Casey was the victim of abuse and control from her parents in different ways, and her abuser told her to just keep on trucking, which he had pretty much done her whole life, it's not impossible to believe that version of events, but there are a lot of holes in it. So if you are going to believe that, you've got to also believe that Casey has some trauma-related gaps in her mind on this stuff.
If that's true and Casey was abused, it also quite often happens that the person who was abused will not allow their own child to be near someone who abused them or
Interesting you say that. Because
do you know what I mean?
When
That's
Caylee
quite
was
often
born,
the case where they just go, I wouldn't even entertain
George had been thrown out of the house. Cindy and George had marital issues, and Cindy had actually finally said piss off to George when Caylee was born.
Right.
And Casey was quite happy then to be in the house with her mother.
Okay.
I believe it wasn't until somewhat recently that George had been allowed back into the house. And Casey had consistently talked to people around her that she wanted to move out, she wanted to get out of there. So Casey and people have said she was talking about, to the point of the day of this happening, she was talking about moving in with a friend of hers and taking Caylee with her. So she says, you're absolutely right, Swanny, that she saw him as a threat and she was concerned that he would abuse his daughter as he had abused her, and she wanted to get her out of that situation.
Is there any suggestion that Cindy was aware of any abuse that occurred when Casey was younger at the hands of
I think
George?
I don't want to get it totally wrong. I'm not sure that Casey ever told her mother about George, but I think she mentioned that the brother was getting handsy. And according to Casey, her mother, and I can't remember the quote, but her mother had basically said, it's your fault, you're a bit slutty or something like that. One of those, let's victim shame the girl. Well, and also we don't really know what level of abuse Cindy herself has suffered at the hands of George.
Sure.
Because she has never said she has suffered any abuse. But George did get, and we know it's easy to get, we know that this is easy to happen. This happens, right? And we know anyone can be the victim of a scam. But George was the victim of a Nigerian prince scam in 2008, so the early days ones, and lost $30,000 to it, among other things. And he had multiple affairs. What? And, you know, he's just not – I don't think George is an upstanding individual. Now, it doesn't mean that he's a murderer or –
It's interesting that he's no longer a policeman, then he sort of changed.
Yes, he left law enforcement to become a security guard.
Yeah, I wondered why that was.
Well, see, you're picking up on what I'm putting down there. So, yes, so let's go back to what the evidence suggests, shall we? And Casey's car was used as evidence. As I mentioned earlier, she'd run out of petrol a couple of times, and the second time she'd left it for too long and it got impounded. This was because...
Was this in the 31 days?
This is in the 31 days.
When was this?
So the 27th of June, 15 days after Caylee disappears, the car is towed. The car is taken away. Or she leaves it, so about 15 days. Now, the first time she ran out of gas, she got her boyfriend to go with her when the parents went home, back to the Anthony home, and they broke into a shed, and they took 2 petrol cans that were in the shed, and they went and filled them up, and they filled the car up. And the boyfriend at the time said he didn't notice anything untoward about the car. And then the second time, on the 27th of June, she left it outside this dumpster or shop, and then on that occasion, she went with a friend to buy a gas can, but when she returned, the car had already been towed. And at the time the car was towed and eventually picked up by George and they opened it up, there was a bag of rubbish in the back of it that had gotten really rotten and disgusting and stank, and they threw it in the bin, and then that was later recovered. So George also testified that at one point in the 31 days, he asked Casey to get something out of the car and she was all cagey about it. But when you actually listen to the testimony, what he describes is that he had reported the petrol cans being stolen to the local police, and he told her, and she went, "Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting." Like, she never said, "Oh shit, that was me, Dad. That was me and my boyfriend," because I'd run out of petrol. And the petrol cans, I think, were in the car. And so when the dad says, "I want to get this thing out of your car," I can't remember what it was. It sounded like bullshit to me, but he was saying this. And she says, "I'll get it for you. I'll get it for you." And he implies in his testimony that she was trying to stop him going into the car so he couldn't see what was in there. But when you actually read the story, you can see she's stolen these cans. She didn't tell him that she'd stolen them. They're in the car. He's going to find that. That's what she's cagey about, is the petrol cans. And what happens is she gets into the garage and she grabs it. She goes, "There's your fucking petrol cans." And he's like, "Oh, great. You know, I reported this to police. Now I look like a dickhead." And she's like, "Oh, well, fuck off," or something, you know, like, because she's not on a great relationship with her father. And that's the story. But he then turns that, when he's talking to the prosecution in the trial, into a story that implies that she was hiding something more. So both the father and the mum on the 911 call make a fuss about this car smelling like a dead body had been in there. Casey, again, we know she's a liar, but she told one of her other friends that...
Which call's that, sorry? Which call was that?
I think it was the third call. So they rang... Remember, she rings 3 times on the same day, and she's like, "Something's wrong, kid's missing." Yeah. She rings finally the third time, because she just found out that the car had been towed, and they go to get it back, and it smells. And so she tells them on this 911 call, "It smells like a dead body's been in here," or something like that, right? Which also I find weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, so...
I wouldn't really know.
I don't know. I just find the whole thing weird. So Casey told a friend of hers that she'd had these squirrels climb up into the car somewhere and die, and she had to clean them out, so it stank of dead bodies.
Oh, Casey.
But what's weird is she didn't actually say, "Well, I left a bag of rubbish in the back." That's probably what everyone's smelling, even though there was a bag of rubbish in the back, and it was disgusting, and they threw it out. And the mum, actually, when the car came back, the mum said it did smell, so she Febrezed it. And the thing is, the man who impounded the car at the impound lot said in his account, he said that he smelled decomposition and he'd recognised it from other times when they'd had cars with bodies in them, because he'd had this happen. I think he said something like 8 or 9 times. I suppose it's a, what do you call it, professional hazard of cars being drums. Yeah.
Bad day.
Yeah.
Not again.
But then in the same kind of statement that he made, he then went on to say that the car was sealed and the smell was very minimal, whereas the dad makes out that within feet of the car, it's just like this abhorrent smell. It's just so bad. And the reality is, when they open up, there's no body. There's no body in the car. There's no dead body in the car.
Yeah, but he said he could smell it, but not enough to report it.
Well, I mean, they sort of reported it because the mum on the 911 call said it does smell like a dead body's been in here.
No, what I mean, the bloke who worked.
Oh yeah, no, he didn't report it. I feel like the man who worked there said, yeah, it smelled, and then it kind of, I feel by suggestion,
grew from that.
Yeah, it grew from that. I'm unclear. I'm not.
Nancy Grace planted that seed.
I'm not convinced. Yeah.
Head.
Now, here we go. So
now here we go.
In all that rubbish.
Yeah. This is where it gets interesting.
There was some scrunched up kitchen towel found in the trunk, like napkin material.
Yeah.
And the prosecution's witness said that the towels had fatty acids on them and that they had found adipocere in the fatty on this towel. Now, adipocere is a wax-like substance formed in the process of decomposition of a body, usually in very wet conditions. However, saponification of lipids, which is what adipocere is a result of, in the body by bacteria can form adipocere at about 2 weeks post-mortem. That's probably the earliest you'd see it. If Caylee's body was ever in Casey's car, and there's every chance that it was probably within the first 1 or 2 or 3 days of the day she goes missing, that they've not seen her. She wasn't in the car 2 weeks later because that's when it runs out of petrol and it goes and gets impounded. And saponification,
so when did it run out of petrol?
It ran out twice. I can't remember the original date. The second time was the 27th. So it was like 11 days after she's gone missing, 11 or 12 days after she's gone missing.
But so it could have been in there for 10 or 11 days.
No, very unlikely. There's no ooze either. There's nothing in the carpet. There's no DNA. There's
leakage.
There's a stain that forensic pathologists said was unlikely to be decomposition.
Is there a matinee jacket?
There's no matinee jacket. But there was a stinky bag of rubbish that had maggots in there. There were maggots and there was an infestation of flies and shit in the garbage bag.
In her car?
She'd left a bag of kitchen rubbish in the car.
Does that often happen to you?
What was that, Swanny?
Doesn't that happen often to you? I mean,
all the time. How did that fly get in here? Oh, it's the maggoty bag in the back seat.
But the prosecution tried to make out that those the pupa and the maggots and the particular bugs only
were attached to the body.
Yeah, and only would be apparent if a dead body was in the car. But the reality is they're bugs and pupa that would come for any biological material that they wanted to feed off. Rotten chops.
But also, what's it doing in the back car to the point where it gets maggoty and blowflies?
Exactly.
Well, it's Florida, so it's warm. It's July. It's hot. She's put a bag of trash in the boot, forgotten about it. Car runs out of petrol.
Don't try to explain
car runs out of petrol.
Forgotten about it to the point where it's.
Well, she just left the car, right? She just left it. So it doesn't smell to her because she's left it. And by the time the impound lot open it up, 3 days later, now we've got flies and grossness.
The prosecution calls their fourth witness Roy Cronk. Can anybody act normally in this town?
It's terrible.
And also that bin bag, we don't know when that was put in the car, as well. So it had that rubbish bag been there for 2 weeks, it'd been there for 3 days, we don't know. And there is no DNA evidence on the paper towel that they said was adipocere, but it is quite difficult to extract DNA from
I'm not
adipocere.
bothered by the adipocere. I'm bothered by the dirty rubbish bag that's
what I'm saying is I believe that what is on the kitchen towel is nothing more than an extension of the dirty rubbish bag. It could just as easily have come from bacon fat is the point. It's not huge. There's no you can't definitively say it was human fat
in the car.
Correct. You can't say she's a dirty mole. You cannot say that that adipocere
doesn't equate to murderer.
Correct.
But
that's what I'm trying to say.
I'm totally judging her for having a dirty rubbish bag in her car for that long.
She had a dirty rubbish bag which may have had raw pork in it at some point. You need a certain amount of fat content.
Enough with this rubbish. It's making me. Let's move on. Fucking
Did she say why she put it in her car and not just in the bin?
I don't care. Tell me. Oh my God, this is the most frustrating story.
It's so bad.
I'm like, it's so good. So there was also talk of chloroform being in the trunk of the car. And
oh my God!
Because you enjoyed the rubbish so much.
She wouldn't have chloroformed her own baby.
Well, that's what the prosecution alleged she did.
Chloroform nanny.
Someone had searched in their Google 3 months earlier something about chloroform, and the mother actually said,
"Who's somebody?"
Well, the mother said because it was a family computer, right? It wasn't her computer; it was a family computer. Anyone in the family could have used it. And Cindy said that she'd had some issue with her dogs or something, and she accidentally looked up chloroform when she was looking for chlorophyll. And that was what she said. She did it. And then she later also claimed to have been looking it up on other searches, but it turned out she was at work because she was a nurse, right? So they checked the logs of her work. And so she couldn't have been the person searching for chloroform at that point. But the prosecution tried to make out that Casey had made her own chloroform and drugged Caylee with it. And that was part of how she killed her. Oh, let alone putting duct tape over her face and suffocating her. I mean,
anything could be true at this stage.
Well, no, I don't think this could be true. I have to say, I think this is a bit of a stretch,
as opposed to the rest of it.
Yeah, this you've got to.
They do this also. The prosecution brings in this, evidentiary bloke who does this test, and he basically heats up pieces of carpet and he heats up parts of the car to be able to create a gas that is stronger than, just what you would smell. And then he puts it through a mass spectrometer and breaks it down into its compounds to then determine what level of chloroform or anything else had been in the vehicle. And that's what the prosecution relied on to say, yes, it was full of chloroform. But the reality was that chloroform gases can form when chlorine react with natural organic matter and can become airborne. Remember, they had pools.
Yes.
And cleaning products such as Clorox, I think that's what Trump suggested people inject themselves with in the time of COVID, contains chlorine. And it's a common product for removing stains and mold. So actually, the presence of chloroform in the car could have happened through someone just cleaning the car at any point. There were not high enough levels of chloroform in the car.
That seems unlikely, though, doesn't it?
with
it
chlorine.
Seems more likely to me than her cooking up her meth lab of chloroform in the, that is just very unlikely.
But if her car was a pool, I'd get why she'd be cleaning it with chlorine.
Clorox is just Clorox is just like a cleaning product. Yeah. I'm not saying that she did. The thing is, again, no one actually had a look at what cleaning products were available in the Anthony home because they didn't want an alternative version of what that could be.
No,
they just went straight to, she's been making chloroform.
But it's like the masking or the duct tape. Like, it's all just nonsense.
It is. It's not evidence.
It could be this. It could be that. It could be anything.
It's not evidence. That's right. They found one strand of hair in the trunk of the car, which they said was Caylee's. And I say they said it was Caylee's because they matched it by mitochondrial DNA, which meant it could have been Cindy's, Caylee's, or Casey's. It's just maternal DNA.
But also, you would expect the baby's
I would expect the baby's hair to be in the car. That's right. But this one piece of hair had a root band on it. And it was forensic.
A root band?
Right. So forensically, when a person dies, sometimes a chemistry occurs and it creates a banding at the root of the hair. And so they used this and said, there you go. That's evidence that a dead Caylee was dead in the car she was in very early stages of decomposition because that's what causes root banding. But guess what? No, root banding does not just happen through being killed and decomposition. It can happen pre-mortem.
When you're chloroformed?
Or trauma.
By other reasons. So it is just a refutable fact. It's not evidence. It's another not evidential piece. Okay, so there really is very little actual evidence in this case, and certainly not enough to convict anyone of murder. But that didn't stop the media from sharing speculative information and at times misinformation to ensure the public were convinced that Caylee Anthony deliberately killed her daughter. Of course, she was labelled a psychopath or a sociopath because her behaviour wasn't consistent with expectations. Good old Nancy Grace interviewed 2 psychologists who evaluated Caylee while she was incarcerated. And Dr. Whites said this: well, the evaluation that we did, and Nancy, I want to stress, we did not only clinical interview and interaction, but we reviewed significant educational and developmental history information, police reports, we looked at family records, we looked at videotapes and pictures. And psychometric testing. So we tried to accumulate the best information available to render some professional opinions. Let's be clear, many of the mental health experts have been yelling psychopath and sociopath. And there are a variety of mental health personality disorders that have qualities that consist of things like the lying, the clear lying, the deceitfulness, the stealing of money, the misrepresentation, the misstatements, the things that Mr. Baez and his opening statement closing talked about strange, unusual behaviours. Certainly those components exist within Miss Anthony, and they were recognised. And we strongly considered those factors when we looked at whether or not she met a personality disorder classification. However, in my mind, specifically when it came to antisocial personality or sociopathy, there was a specific provision that ruled out her being diagnosed with that disorder. Now, there were 2 psychologists who diagnosed, I suppose, or interviewed her, and both of them said she was extremely immature, but not a psychopath, not a sociopath, or a narcissist. And, of course, apparently that interview was quite short because Nancy Grace didn't like the answer she was being given. Anyway, in January 2009, so about a month after Caylee's remains were found, George Anthony tried to take his own life. Now, he didn't succeed, but he did leave a 5-page letter, which was recovered by police when they intervened. It wasn't a confession as such, this suicide note, but he did talk about being to blame for Caylee being gone and that he would be with her soon. As I said, George was one of the prosecution's star witnesses, though his testimony and statements were contradictory, and so his credibility was undermined. George's credibility was undermined by things like the car smell. So initially he told investigators that the Pontiac Sunfire smelled like a dead body. Later he said, actually it could have just been the garbage. And then later again in an interview in 2018, he went on and on and on about how it smelled like a dead body. Sometimes he claimed ignorance of Casey's fake Universal Studios jobs, and other times he implied that he had suspected that she didn't work there. And when he retold his timeline of what happened on June the 16th, his timeline varied depending on when he was telling the story. And, of course, for me, I saw them heading off to work at 12:50 on the 16th of June, but the phone records indicate that she didn't actually leave the house until 4:20, which I've really got to question. And also the whole backpack thing. No backpacks were ever recovered.
With that statement, though, he made that statement of time 31 days later kind of thing. Is that right? How long?
About that, yeah, because it'd be they arrested her the day after the 911 call. So all of these conversations and giving the account of what had happened on that day would have been within that 24
at least 31 days.
Yep.
I mean, I couldn't remember what time I did things 31 days ago.
True. And, of course, he categorically denied the abuse allegations under oath, and there was no evidence to corroborate them, so fair enough. Despite contradictions, prosecutors needed George's testimony. He established the timeline and described the car's odour using his law enforcement background to add credibility. So why would they not look at George? They needed George.
Not his child molesting background to detract from credibility, but his law enforcement background to add to it.
But even in the way that the police interacted with him, they treated him like he was one of them. Not that he was a suspect's father or indeed a suspect himself. In the 2022 documentary, Casey's defence team said that her brother Lee came forward and told them that George had previously in their childhood, whatever, disposed of dead family pets by wrapping them in a blanket and putting them in bin bags and then taping them with duct tape. This was raised at the trial to cast suspicion on George, given that Caylee's remains seemed to have been treated in the same way. There was no forensic evidence linking George to the remains, and there's no forensic evidence linking Caylee to the remains either.
Linking anyone.
That's right.
Yeah.
But again, he was an ex-cop, so it's not like he'd know how to avoid that anyway, would he? I believe that there was significant bias in the investigation, if you haven't picked up on that already. And whether George was or wasn't involved, he wasn't under suspicion. He was not investigated. And as an ex-police, as I said, ex-policeman was one of their own, and they approached him as a reliable witness rather than a suspect. It's just weird. They interpreted his contradictions as stress, not deceit, but we won't, say the same of Caylee. His suicide attempt was viewed as grief, not evidence of guilt. He was shielded by subconscious deference from fellow officers. Caylee's 31 days of lies and bizarre behaviour made her the obvious suspect. Once she was framed as the villain, investigators had little incentive to expand the circle of suspicion. Also, they needed him. The defence did try to intimidate George and get under his skin, and they did a little bit, but the jury pretty much dismissed all of their attempts to point at George as the problem as just, hearsay or not. There's no evidence for it. And again, he was never investigated, so of course there's no evidence. And apparently they did have his call records, but no one actually really looked at them. So, because it'd be interesting to see what George was doing. In Caylee's call records, there's a call from him to her at 3:04 p.m. He allegedly went to work around 2 for a 3 p.m. start, and his work was 30 minutes away, so he may have left at 2:30. But why would he be calling Caylee 4 minutes into his shift? Also, no one seems to be too interested in this. The defence called his mistress, yes, he was having an affair in the middle of the trial, who testified that George had told her that Caylee had died in an accident and the whole thing had snowballed. Cindy and George's marriage had its up and downs, as I said. The Nigerian prince didn't help because he took $30,000 off him. I don't think George is actually the sharpest knife in the drawer either. So the thing is, right?
It feels like there's a whole lot of knife handles in the drawer and no knives.
No knives, right? And
no one's sharp.
If Caylee drowned in the pool, which is what the defence said, why would George or Caylee not just call 911? It's an accident. So why wouldn't you just call an ambulance or call the police? Caylee strongly implies in her documentary that she believes George had begun abusing Caylee, and she thinks that something went wrong in that abuse and that he accidentally killed her. And she did talk about her account. She said when he abused her as a child, if she ever tried to fight back or say no, he would smother her with a pillow until she passed out. And she tells that story, and then she obviously implies that perhaps a similar thing had happened. Then he put her in the pool to make it look like a drowning. Now, if this were true, and I'm not saying it is, and who knows, because she's constantly lying, so who knows whether she's telling the truth these days or not, it does make sense of one thing, why he didn't call 911. If he thought there was forensic evidence that could implicate him and DNA evidence on the body that could implicate him, that would make some sense. But it doesn't make sense.
Why would he bother putting the body in the water, though?
Oh, just to make it look like she drowned. It was the idea.
To
convince Caylee that that's how she died. That's right. But it doesn't make sense that Caylee's body was dumped less than a mile from the house and so close to the road. And I've looked at maps. It doesn't make sense. Her body was so close. It could have been found. It's surprising. Well, it was found. What was his name? Roy Knox? No, what was it? Roy Kronk.
Roy
Kronk.
Also, the psychologist said that given the level of immaturity in Caylee, she would have been inclined to leave the responsibility of anything serious to someone else. In this case, if her father was present and took Caylee would have assumed he'd call 911 or do what was required to resuscitate her or do the adult thing. So they kind of excuse Caylee for not calling 911 by saying she would have expected the actual adult in the room to do it.
What? Not the actual child's mother?
No. Well, no, but I think what we can surmise from Caylee is that she's a bit of a child herself still at this point. Searches on the family computer regarding suicidal ideation. Some suggest this was George feeling guilty. He had an AOL account and Caylee didn't, and it was on that account that the search was made. Some have said that George is an innocent man who makes himself look guilty. I say if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a guilty person. So at the end of all these twists and turns, on July the 5th, 2011, the jury acquitted Caylee of murder and manslaughter, but convicted her of lying to law enforcement. So she got off.
Accurate.
And And in fairness, she should have, because you couldn't have said beyond reasonable doubt that she had murdered her kid. There's no evidence. As a result of her conviction, she couldn't leave the country, though, so her defence team had to get her out of there toot sweet because the public was so outraged they feared for her safety. And basically she went into hiding and lived with one of the investigators in her defence team. Now she works for him and has recently emerged on social media as a legal advocate, working for people who have been wrongly accused and played by the media, as she says she was. She continues to say she doesn't believe that Caylee drowned because she thinks her father accidentally killed her. It is totally possible that Caylee went outside on the day and climbed up and died in the pool as a result of misadventure. And unfortunately, it is still a cause of death in children quite regularly, and in Caylee's age group in particular. So children between 1 and 4 are more likely to die of drowning in the family pool. The questions will always stand: what happened to Caylee and who put her in the woods? Why did Casey pretend everything was okay for 31 days? And for me, what role did George have to play in the whole thing? I do believe that the investigation was flawed. There wasn't enough evidence. Only Casey was looked at, and the prosecution leaned too heavily on public opinion and thought it was a slam dunk. But the evidence was shithouse. Cindy and George are still married, though they have nothing to do with Casey. George had a near-fatal accident a few years back, and in an interview said he wanted Casey's forgiveness, though no one, including Casey, is quite sure what for.
That's what I was going to say. What?
Cindy seems suspicious of her husband, that then again he is a lying, cheating spouse, so maybe that's just the norm for her. Casey's life wasn't great when Caylee died, but she was young and with a supportive mother and friends. She's widely considered to have been a loving mother and not a party animal, regardless of what the media said. It is completely unlikely that she killed her daughter on purpose, which leads me to again ask, why cover it up? Some have speculated that her need for her parents, particularly her mother's approval, was so high, and the fear of being rejected for failing or letting her mum's expectations down led her to hiding the accident, same as she tried to hide her pregnancy. I don't think we'll ever know what happened. And we certainly can't trust Casey, as she is the proverbial boy who cried wolf. And that, my friends, is the Caylee/Casey Anthony case.
Bloody hell. I'm not happy.
I knew you would.
I'm not happy.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm not happy.
I agree.
Oof.
What a family. I'm disgusted in them.
They are foul, aren't they?
They really need to take a long, hard look at themselves. Irrespective of who did it, they were all like, oh, well, I'm busy or I'm doing whatever else. Honestly, disgraceful. I really don't have any time for any of them.
On the day that Caylee's remains were
Poor
found,
child.
one of the lawyers, because at this time they were still saying, oh, it's not Casey, and so the defence lawyers were with the family a lot.
Yep.
They rocked up to the house, and Mum and Dad had just got this fantastic new speedboat that arrived, and it was part of some kind of Caylee Anthony trust or, charity type thing. Yes, that's the right face.
Shh.
And they were on telly immediately. They were being paid for interviews throughout the whole thing. They continue to get paid for interviews. There is something wrong.
Really off, isn't
There's something
there?
rotten in the state of
Denmark.
Orlando. Yeah.
Orlando.
Yeah.
I am really...
Yeah.
I found that very
disturbing.
Very hard to stomach.
Yeah.
Yes. It was just like one thing that bothered me after another. And it's sort of like, oh my God, everything could be sort of explained away in that kind of, it's like, okay.
Yeah,
but actually, if you go back to the behaviours of these people, that's where I'm really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yes, the evidence may have been not been able to support certain things, but their behaviour suggests that things were not good and that they've behaved appallingly, even if they were not the one in any point responsible for the actual death of Caylee. They certainly were implicated through the whole way they behaved. And, oh, God, the 31-day thing, I mean, where is she? Oh, okay.
She's at the nanny's. That nanny I've never met.
Still?
I can't get past the fact that no one had met Zanny the nanny and questioned it.
Yeah.
I can't get past.
There's so many things that
when
don't
you just
ring
think
true.
about kind of normal people who are managing kids and life
Yeah.
and school and drop-offs and all the rest of it. It's not I mean, even I have gone and done school pickups and school drop-offs when my sister can't do it for their kids. There'd be a point in time if the mum is also being a caregiver. Yes, I know she's a nurse, but if she's also being a caregiver and she cares deeply for her grandchild, you would imagine she would be saying, look, I can't actually do her on that, like I can't look after her, but I could drop her at Zanny's for you. Like you would think.
There's no way it would have gone for 31 days
nanny
if they had lived in the same house.
Been more integrated into the family, wouldn't it? But, even before the 31 days. Even before the 31 days.
Yes, I know that. Yeah. Before the 31 days, I'm saying, because I know there's a suggestion, obviously, that she's then sort of moved on to live with the boyfriend or whatever else. But the grandmother would not have, she said that she loved her, she was obviously in her life. She wouldn't have just let it go on and on and on, especially when she was like, I'm a bit concerned about this. Do you know what? I'm just not buying it.
There's something wrong.
Schmidty, do you know why she rang 3 times in one day? Like, why they rang 911 3 times?
No, not entirely. I think perhaps they didn't get traction. So I think she rang up and said, there's something wrong. I haven't seen my granddaughter for 31 days. I think she's missing. Then Casey gets on the phone and says, yeah, actually, I haven't seen her either,
Oh! And sorry, who are you?
It just doesn't.
And who are you?
Yeah, it doesn't.
She's with
I'm
the
her mum.
babysitter. She's with the baby. And then I think maybe what happened was...
Are you paying the babysitter or are you...
She starts the story, I think, a bit
contact?
Later about the child being abducted. And that might be the time the mum does the second call. And then the third call is around that car, the impounding of the car. At that point, the mum's like, there's something totally wrong here. There's a smell in this car. To quote Kenny, there's a smell in this car that will outlast religion. There's something wrong here. Yeah.
I can't get past. So she's been arrested. So all of that 31-day thing's played out. All of the crazy bullshit that's got us to this point. And then when the police have her arrested and they're doing some investigation, then she takes the police to Universal Studios, to her workplace, and then goes, "Oh, it's not really."
I don't work here. I think they.
Do you understand what's going on here, lady?
No, and that's
no.
The point is, from a psychological perspective, if she has disassociated and just is living in a fantasy world because of the trauma of her child dying, then, like to your point earlier, there is a mental health issue there. I think that is part of this. She's just turned off. It's like the kid never existed almost. I don't believe she talked about her or anything. Sorry, there was one moment where I think one of the housemates of the boyfriend witnessed her. She'd been watching a video on her laptop of Caylee and she was crying. There was one time.
And when was that?
In the 31 days.
In the 31 days.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So remember with Scott Peterson, we were saying his behaviour is that of a guilty person. Whether he did it or not, there's things that he's done there that just make you go guilty.
I know.
Look at any of them and go, they're not guilty. Like, maybe it's a conspiracy between the three.
Thank you. That's George my point, right? I really think, and Cindy was at work, so Cindy wasn't physically there, but I think Cindy knows more than she lets on. Or suspects. Like, she definitely suspects, I reckon.
Yes.
It feels like they did it. Like, and I know you can't
That's what I think too.
They're guilty of it, but
yeah, they have.
They know what happened.
They know what happened. Yeah,
and they're not telling.
And it's really interesting because the death penalty was on the table, and George kept being the star witness for the prosecution. George basically went in there trying to make sure his daughter got the death penalty, and I believe it was after the defence spoke to the brother Lee and said, your sister's going to get killed for this. And that was when he came back and said, by the way, not sure if it's material, but my dad, when our pet cat died, coincidentally, Dad wrapped it in a blanket, put it in rubbish bags and tied, and,
Is he a truth stretcher too?
No, there's no evidence that he is. He's quite unrelated.
Well, I mean, that could be evidence.
I hope for his sake he is. They're a nightmare. Oh, my God.
Unrelated.
What a terrible bunch. Ugh. I'm so confused still by her being involved and not being involved. And then when mum calls in, she's like, oh, yeah, she has been missing. Then I'm going to lie about this. But, yeah, then I was with dad. I mean, oh, my God, excuse my French, what a clusterfuck of ideas that have come together to sort of paint a really messy picture.
Yeah, and it's only till very recently in that 2022 documentary that she very clearly says, I believe that my father killed my daughter.
I don't doubt that she has utterly convinced herself of that now. And the way she's now an advocate for other videos, I can so imagine that I don't know what happened, obviously, but she will now have been, forgive me for using the word groom because I can't think of another word.
I think you're right.
But in her mind now, as someone who has now got through that process, she's going to be that's a great word for it. And it's like, now I'm this.
Yes, I agree.
There I was that. Now I'm this, and I'm now being led down that path.
When you watch her, she looks a bit like Alanis Morissette. Sorry, Alanis. When you watch her, she's very convincing. And I think she has been programmed into thinking, this is where I'm at. So that's what I'm saying about her being the boy who cried wolf. You will never know. You can never really determine what happened unless George does actually say, well, actually it was this, you know. And he may never because he's a truth stretcher too.
Well, there's no point in them doing it. They've got away with it, basically. What are they going to do now? They've got their infamy, if they can do with all what they want. They seem to have been able to get on with their lives. The only person here who's lost
Caylee
is poor little Caylee.
Yeah.
How awful. Just
it is.
And then to have been sort of that 31 day.
Clarky?
I can't. I just can't think of anyone.
I can't imagine a loving
Caylee.
mother putting your child in rubbish bags. I can't imagine that a loving mother would do that.
There's no evidence or no talk of another person coming into the house.
No.
Like no one's saying, oh, my God, we all fell asleep and
I think
when we woke up she was gone.
I think Caylee Anthony would like to believe that's true. But there's no one. No, there's no.
What I'm saying is there's no talk of that.
So is it your daughter or your husband who killed your granddaughter? Yeah.
Correct.
It's that, isn't it? Like it's one of the two.
Yeah.
And which means one of the two hid put the baby in the garbage bag, put it in a bag somewhere.
Said, I'll deal with it and got rid of the body. And said, just keep pretending like everything's normal.
Regardless of how she died.
But it's weird.
At least one of them knows what happened.
Correct. Yep.
Probably two of them know or were involved in the disposal of the body. And then the cover up. Like there's this 31-day cover up where they're trying to act like everything's fine.
If you really want to cover it up, why do you go, oh, and it smells like a dead body, spit in there. Look at the car. Look at the car. Look at the car. It's weird.
I don't get that bit. I don't get most of it, to be honest. It's a very unusual set of circumstances, complicated by some very unusual people. I
was hoping there was going to be a moral to the story, which is don't lie. But it almost feels like the moral of the story is do lie. You'll get away with it.
Baffle them with bullshit, yes.
No, I think she got away on the hair of a chinny chin chin. I think it was only
But she got away.
But I think it was only because the prosecution really did think this was a slam dunk and they didn't sweat the evidence well enough. They didn't. I mean, they were very good team and they did a pretty good job, but the defence were just able to seed enough doubt, which is surprising. But
the point is she still got away. So it sounds like she never once tried to tell the truth. Well, no. So she got off through lying. So rather than at any point going, you know what, I'll be truthful with you and I'll tell you what happened, which it sounded like she never did until possibly after her therapy.
She doesn't really know.
He got away too. So in
her mind, she doesn't know what happened.
Whatever. The point is he lied, she lied, I think the mum lied or the grandmother lied, and they all got away with it. That's the bit that I'm annoyed at. One of them did it, I think, and all of them got away with it through just talking bullshit.
But even if none of them actually killed Caylee and she died by accident, they certainly covered up. They didn't 100%. Do the right thing.
One of them found her dead and decided to lie.
Yeah. Put her around the corner in the woods. Who does that?
Literally around
Bury her
the
in
corner.
garbage bags rather than fessing up
I know. Just
that
terrible.
an accident happened.
Terrible.
Like, that's best case scenario.
Yep. Sentencing. Okay, let's say we know all three of them lied.
Something undignified, because
Yes.
the poor, what happened
Oh,
to
it's terrible.
Caylee, the post-mortem stuff that happened
That's
to Caylee is
horrendous.
horrendous.
It's just the disrespect.
From
That's what gets me.
this
This beautiful little
not
girl
just that, there's
dumped like rubbish.
and then the animals and all of that. The whole thing is just
disgusting.
awful.
But I was a beautiful
didn't
mum
even
and I
bury
always
her.
cared for her a great deal and I was
Yeah.
They
always
didn't
this and I
even
was always
bury her that I know of.
No.
I know she did ask
No.
someone to borrow a shovel,
Mhm.
but the baby wasn't buried, so who knows what that shovel was for. She said it was to dig up a root.
Maybe, but the ground was too muddy, so we just put it on the side of the footpath because
Unless she gave her a shallow
Like that
grave and then
police.
that hurricane came through and the water dislodged the body. Don't know.
possibly.
Again, more stuff we'll never know. But yes,
That's
something
where it does sort of
undignified.
speak to her in some ways, where I think with him, surely as a former police officer, you wouldn't be so naive to go and leave the body so close to the road, so prominent. If the hurricane had come through and lifted up, whatever, fair enough. But she strikes me as that she was described. She's so immature that that's the kind of ridiculous decision that she would make and go, I don't, and I'm not saying that she did. It doesn't add up. And the thing that does add up is simply their behaviour around the things that did happen. That I can see, and so that I can judge them on, and that's what I will judge them on, which is they, as a unit, are the most disappointing group of people in terms of how they viewed and respected their granddaughter. I just can't get my head around it, really. It is just disgraceful. How I'm going to punish them, I do not know, Schmidty. Give me an idea. I'm pretty sure that they will be punished.
Well, I mean, for Casey, I'm quite happy to put a scold's bridle on her for a bit because, a lot of her issue is what comes out of her mouth, right? Too much talk. So the old medieval thing, holds the tongue so she can't talk.
Yeah.
So then we don't have to listen to her lies for any period of time.
The bit where you talked about the grandparents getting the speedboat, that's where I think I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't. How do I punish people who think like that?
Where's
their head at?
The defense
You know
lawyer
what I
who
mean?
was telling that story, or the investigator in the defense team who was telling that story, said, I just looked around and was like, what the fuck is going on with these people? It was the day that they found the remains and they were more interested in the speedboat.
That's why I don't know how to. I don't know how to turn the turn the vice. You know what I mean? On punish them because I don't know
which bit would
hurt them because
maybe we sink the boat.
Clarky.
Let's sink the boat for a start.
Absolutely. But then it becomes that's where I really struggle because I don't want it to be a materialistic kind of punishment because then that gives even less sort of grace towards poor Caylee. And I just think, I don't know.
Where's their dignity?
I know they don't seem to have any.
No integrity, nothing.
That's the word. Where is it?
The defense team brought his mistress in as a witness. I swear, when I was watching this thing, I just went, what now? I was like, this just got a whole level more insane. I already thought it was a crazy story, but that was even, more insane.
That is.
But back to your thing, Swanny, about saying, yes, you could say that. I think you're probably right. I think, I believe.
Yes.
I think Caylee probably drowned in the pool and Casey found her and, like the pregnancy, couldn't cope with the consequences of that. And so she did take her, wrap her in a blanket and put her around the corner in the woods and pretended nothing had happened. That is the most likely
That would make
scenario.
sense to me. That makes sense to me
because
on
there was no previous indication that she would kill her.
Who probably gets a hard time anyway, and then she think I've really, oh my god, everything. Everyone said I wouldn't be able to do it, and I haven't
if
been
she's
able to do it.
dead, there's no calling 911 to resuscitate her. It's just I'm going to be blamed for this. I'm in trouble.
Yeah,
everyone's going to hate me. I'm just going to hide it. That is the most likely scenario, I think.
One other thing, you said that she's saying that the baby was a product of date rape or a result of date rape. Is there anything more about that?
No. I think it was...
They're all just convenient lies.
Well, it might not be a lie, but I think what she's establishing was herself as a somewhat naive, easily
such an innocent,
victimized person.
It's just convenient. You know, I now have a story that explains my weird behaviour. I have a story that explains that really weird thing, and there's always another story, and there's no evidence to it, and there's nothing.
She talks about how her psychology was that she spent all her time trying to make everything look perfect because, to your point, Swanny, she was living in an environment of disgusting people, but outwardly they had to look normal. They had to look good. You know, they had to look...
Yeah.
And she had
I can't
this...
be sympathetic to
You don't have to be
that.
sympathetic to her.
No.
But that's, you know, to her view, her mother had her doing... Like she was... I can't remember, but like, you know, Swanny, she was probably a dancer and a this and a that. Like she was very popular.
I don't know. That's what I think. It's hard to know because I don't know enough about her background or whatever else. But to Clarky's point, there's always a post sort of reason why that would... You know, sometimes people just do really shitty things because they're not good people and they make very bad choices.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, and I think this is a series of very shitty things and bad choices, and it's complicated by then whether or not other things had happened in the past, but it's not an excuse.
There was no evidence that she was a bad person prior. In fact, people said she was very generous and she was very kind. And
that's fine, but you can still make bad decisions.
I believe she did make a bad decision. Yeah. And continued to back that up by lying and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
The lying behaviour, though, I mean, I'm inclined to... I don't disbelieve the abuse, but there's no evidence.
I don't know what to believe. I think that's the frustrating thing.
We just don't know.
God.
No.
And we won't know.
Makes it even...
We won't.
Makes it hard to
There's
punish
no
even because you've got
incentive
no
to
idea
find out either. That's just it.
Well, when I saw George being interviewed in, I think it was 2018, and he'd had a really bad car accident and his whole head was like pinned into one of those traction type cages, I thought, well, maybe Karma is just already dealing that out for him.
I bet you a lot of people thought that.
Even if he did nothing more than lie or cover up things, he certainly did seem to not support his daughter, put it that way. So, but yeah, I think I'm quite happy with Casey just giving it a rest in the yap front because she just has done a lot of that. And she's in it in her current documentary. She does a lot of yap.
I mean, a frontal lobotomy wouldn't go astray.
If the version of events is that she was abused and that she disassociated and she freaked out and she, you know, the kid died by accident, I don't think I'm comfortable with giving her a frontal lobotomy, but I do think probably a fair amount of time in a psychiatric ward would be good. Get her through that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean by it being so frustrating because of all the lies.
You just don't know. Yeah.
I still don't think you're getting the truth from her. But if I'm punishing the bit that is troublemaking, lying, creating all of this drama and trauma and, you know, frontal lobotomy it stops. At least she's not going to be in this situation again. If she's genuinely a victim, I feel horrible for her. If she's a victim of all of that abuse and her father has drowned or killed or whatever her child, you know, all of that is horrific and you certainly don't want to punish any of that.
No.
But for the fucking lying that she's done.
That's the problem. And that is the moral of the story, my friends. Just like the boy who cried wolf. You must not lie.
Exactly.
No.
No one believes you in the end, ever.
No.
Correct.
Or as Mr. Darcy said, once my good opinion is lost, it is lost for good. And therein lies the problem.
There is no good opinion left for them with me.
For poor old the Anthonys. All right, well, I guess on that note, we should probably say goodbye. Tutty bye-byes or something like that. Thanks for joining me on that one.
Ciao.
I know it was quite a lot. And as we say every week, miss you already. Ciao, ciao, ciao.
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 Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.